Chris Coons didn't just ask Kash Patel questions, he cornered him. In front of the entire Senate, Coons forced Patel to confront a promise he made under oath that the FBI would never be politicized. What followed was a tense exchange that raised an even bigger question. Is America's top law enforcement agency being quietly reshaped into a political weapon?
Director Patel, thank you for being here. There's a number of issues I hope that we can speak to. I want to start by reading something you said to me during your confirmation hearing under oath. I have no interest, no desire, and will not, if confirmed, go backwards. There will be no politicization at the FBI. Then you looked me in the eyes and said there will be no retribution actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed as director. I told you that in your office. I tell you that again today. I'm concerned that that's not what's happened, that since you took over as director, you've cleaned house or forced out senior leaders across the Bureau, in particular targeting those that worked on investigations of President Trump. The former acting director has just sued you for firing him for political reasons. So did a leader in the D.C. field office. And the well-respected leader of the Salt Lake City office was pushed out last month, leaving that office shorthanded at a particularly difficult time. I'm worried that these actions compromise the Bureau's ability to keep Americans safe. Hundreds of agents have resigned. You are lowering application standards to fill vacancies. You've reassigned large numbers of agents to work on immigration and street crime, issues other law enforcement agencies can handle, perhaps more effectively with the FBI. But I'm concerned that this compromises the Bureau's ability to address national security risks, uniquely its capability. In fact, you've shut down the Office of Integrity and Compliance, which makes sure that agents act in a lawful and ethical way, and reassign staff away from domestic terrorism investigations exactly at a moment I think we are all concerned about it. I also have to ask, you came before the Appropriations Committee in May and told us you wanted a $500 million budget cut for the FBI, literally an effort to defund the police. I am grateful for the work of the men and women of the FBI. They've done great work this year in Delaware, partnering with the Dover Police Department to support human trafficking victims, partnering with the Middletown Police Department on armed robbery and carjacking. And it's urgent, I think, that we fix the direction and the prioritization within the FBI. And I wish we could focus on those efforts today. But I'm seeing an FBI leadership more focused on social media clout and on political revenge than on fighting crime. Director, have you ever ordered that an FBI employee be terminated because he or she worked on an investigation into President Trump?
Senator, thank you. One quick correction for the record. There's 280 NV investigations. I gave the incorrect number to Senator Hawley. Thank you.
Understood.
As far as a lot of your statement, I disagree with it. I'm happy to address it. But the only way, generally speaking, an individual is terminated at the FBI is if they have violated their oath of office, violated the law, or failed to uphold the standards that we need them to have at the FBI.
So those who say that they've been fired because of working on investigations into President Trump are lying or misrepresenting?
Well, those matters are alleged in litigation, which is ongoing, so I can't comment on those specifically.
Could you comment on why you fired former acting FBI Director Driscoll?
I can't because it's ongoing litigation.
Could you say now definitively under oath that the rank and file agents who were assigned to work January 6 cases will not be terminated because that's what they were assigned to do?
I've said it before and I've said it again. Your case assignment, as I was given case assignments when I was a young prosecutor, does not dictate your career or your termination.
Thank you. Then let me go to the appropriations question. In May, you testified before the subcommittee on which I serve, defending the president's request that we slash the FBI's budget by about $500 million. The day before, you testified the opposite in front of the House. Where are we in terms of the budget request? Senator Graham earlier said if you're requesting more funding for more agents, let us know. We're nearing the end of the fiscal year. In front of the committee on which I serve here in the Senate, your request was for a reduction of hundreds of millions of dollars. Where are we?
Where we are in the budget cycle is we at the FBI are in support of the president's budget, and we are in support of eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. We've already identified tens of millions of dollars of duplicative contracts that the FBI was spending on software and private sector engagements. We've also identified duplicative workloads. So we are transitioning those folks out of doing the same thing twice over and into the field. And that's my focus right now. And the move of the FBI headquarters is also going to save the FBI $3.5 billion in the American taxpayers. So we're focused on eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. And as I told Senator Graham, if I'll go back and talk to my team, and if we need more, we'll let you know.
Are you planning any additional reductions in force, Director?
No.
How many vacancies are you currently trying to fill within the agency?
In terms of the 1811 ranks, there's a few hundred open vacancies that we have funded. And so we're filling all of those with our hybrid 1811 program and our new recruitment program. And I think a lesser amount of IAs and SOS.
So if hundreds of agents have retired or taken the fork in the road offer, and you have vacancies, but you're requesting $500 million less. How does having fewer FBI agents help you tackle violent crime and address our national security issues?
Just to put it in perspective, Senator, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. If we had this $500 million, we've done the math. It would take us 14 years to onboard every vacancy that's on the books currently at the FBI because we can't hire these folks and train them overnight. It's a years-long process. So we are currently focused on recruiting the best and filling the positions to the best of our needs. And we, even if we had this extra money, wouldn't be able to hire them overnight. We're looking for where the need is greatest, where in the country we need to send them, and how we can change the training requirements, which is why I'm thrilled to have police officers. They might not have a college degree, but they got the street smarts and the cop smarts to become FBI agents, and that's what we want.
Let me turn to Section 702.
Yes,
When you testified in front of the CJS subcommittee, we talked about this issue. You told me you were in favor of reauthorizing FISA Section 702 when it expires next year, so long as the reforms implemented last year, reforms like better training for agents and real consequences for inappropriate searches of Americans' communications were maintained. You also said that you had some ideas about how to make Section 702 better going forward. Can you give me an update on the FBI's implementation of these reforms and the direction you think it should go?
Absolutely. I think you're referring to the query process, and if you're not, let me know. But any instance of abuse or mistakes that were made in the query process have now been changed. It used to be you can make multiple mistakes and continue to access the query database system. I've changed that. If you make a mistake, you're immediately sidelined, a review is conducted. And if it was an actual mistake, i.e. there should have been S on the end of that name and there wasn't, then we put you back in. But we have to review those matters. So that's happening. And if there was an intentional mistake, you have no more access to the 702 query system and its database. So we've also done an audit of the entire 702 system and the query databases. And now we are nearly 100% of the audit. And I think we found one or two, I'll have to get back to you, quote unquote mistakes within that system, which are currently being reviewed.
Thank you. You had told me in May that you'd send me updated statistics about the Section 702 searches of Americans data. I haven't received it. When will I get that?
I'll work with my team to get that to you, Senator.
And frankly, in May, when you were testifying that you were implementing these reforms, you were also closing down the Office of Internal Auditing at the FBI. Now, that was the office created in the first Trump administration to improve the Bureau's compliance with Section 702. How is that working out? How can you continue to advocate for robust civil liberty protections, but shut down the office that was created to enforce those safeguards? Help me understand this.
Absolutely, Senator. This is a great example of sort of duplicative work. There was two divisions in the FBI working on this, and all we did was the inspection division, which is the leader in this query system and this audit system, has now been given the single source mandate to conduct these. So the OIA, its elimination is just taking folks who were working there and were experts in it and folded in under the inspection division, and then taking other folks that we didn't need because we had enough manpower and pushing them elsewhere in the FBI.
I'm concerned about the rise in threats against members of our judiciary. What are you doing with the U.S. Marshal Service to help protect our federal judges and with state and local judicial systems to help provide some of the expertise of the FBI in protecting them as well?
I share your concern, Senator. We have 35 open investigations, 17 against federal judges, and the remainder against state court judges and threats that they have received. And as you know, federally, there's a specific statute which prohibits that. So we are working up those cases and referring them to prosecution where we can meet the threshold for evidence.
In your written testimony, you referenced how counter-UAS legislation expires and we need to resolve the conflict in jurisdiction and authority. I agree, this is an urgent concern. I've heard from state and local law enforcement about it, from the folks responsible for major events, whether it's sports or concerts or public events. Given the tragic increase in political violence, I'm very concerned about the misuse of drones and the potential of there being a catastrophic event. What could we do to address this challenge?
Well, obviously, reauthorizing the capabilities that we have under the counter-UAS program. But just to highlight what the FBI is specifically doing, we've been given the mandate to work with DHS to secure not just the Club World Cup that we had, by the way, which occurred in 32 matches across the country without any significant incident, which we're proud of. And we're taking that model for the next World Cup and also the Olympics. But the reason I bring that up is because we pushed out our counter-UAS programs to address the security needs. And that's where our focus is on events like that.
Mr. Director, thank you for your testimony. I look forward to working on actually solving criminal problems and reducing the extent to which what we're going back and forth about is more political and partisan point scoring and more actually solving crimes for the American people.
Yes, sir.
Senator Kennedy.
What Senator Chris Coons did in that exchange was more than simply press Kash Patel for yes or no answers. He was trying to hold up a mirror, forcing Patel to confront his own words and the reality of his leadership. And when you really step back, this moment exposes the bigger question. What happens when an institution as powerful as the FBI, which is supposed to remain neutral, becomes entangled in political loyalty tests and partisan agendas? Think about the stakes here. The FBI is not just another government office. It is the country's premier law enforcement agency, charged with protecting against terrorism, cyber threats, espionage, organized crime, and yes, government corruption itself. Its credibility relies on one thing above all else: independence. The minute the public begins to believe the FBI serves a political master, whether left or right, trust evaporates. And without trust, no amount of badges, guns, or field offices can make its work effective. Coons reminded Patel of a promise he made during his confirmation: no politicization, no retaliation. But since Patel took charge, the evidence points to a very different story. Senior FBI officials who had worked on investigations connected to Donald Trump were either pushed out, forced to retire, or in some cases, allegedly fired outright. Lawsuits have already been filed. That's not speculation. It's happening in black and white. And for those inside the Bureau, it sends a chilling message. Your job may not depend on your professionalism or your service, but on whether your work happens to inconvenience those in power. That's the slippery slope every democracy fears. And let's not overlook the budget angle. Coons pressed Patel on why he requested a $500 million cut for the FBI. This wasn't a stray number. It was a conscious choice. At a time when threats from domestic extremism are growing, cyber attacks are more sophisticated than ever, and global tensions are rising, why would a director argue for fewer resources, fewer agents, and weaker training? If anything, this should be a moment to strengthen, not weaken, America's premier law enforcement agency. Yet Patel's explanation felt like a juggling act, one where eliminating duplication conveniently aligned with shrinking the Bureau. For many, that sounds less like reform and more like sabotage dressed up in bureaucratic language. And here's something that didn't get said outright in the hearing, but hangs in the background. Once the standard for hiring and training is lowered, the long-term damage is enormous. Diluting the experience and expertise of the FBI doesn't just affect today's cases, it undermines the Bureau for decades to come. Think of the institutional knowledge lost when seasoned professionals walk out the door, only to be replaced by a revolving door of less experienced hires. That kind of brain drain isn't easily repaired. Perhaps the most striking moment was when Coons asked Patel point-blank whether he had ever ordered agents terminated for working on Trump-related investigations. Patel dodged, saying only that terminations come from violations of law or standards. But that's the problem. If everything is as above board as Patel claims, why not give a definitive, transparent denial? Why hide behind litigation? Transparency in moments like these is what maintains confidence in the system. Evasion does the opposite. This isn't just about one senator sparring with one FBI director. It's about the deeper question of whether the FBI is still capable of carrying out its mission impartially, without bending to the winds of politics. If the answer is no, then every case it handles, from counterterrorism to corruption, risks being tainted in the eyes of the public. And that erosion of trust is a danger no less severe than the threats the Bureau is supposed to fight. So here's what's at stake. Independence versus influence, professionalism versus politics, the rule of law versus loyalty tests. Coons' questioning cut to the heart of whether Kash Patel is leading an FBI for all Americans or an FBI that serves one man's political interests. And that's not a minor issue. That's a crossroads for the health of American democracy itself. And that's why I want to hear from you. Do you believe the FBI, under Patel's leadership, can still act as an independent, credible institution, or is it sliding into the trap of political capture? Share your perspective in the comments, because moments like these don't just live in the halls of Congress, they ripple outward and affect the entire justice system. And if you want more breakdowns that go beyond the headlines and unpack the real stakes, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're always part of the conversation.